Afghanistan is probably the last country anyone today would expect to be launching megaprojects. 40 years of war, ruin, isolation, and sanctions. Yet this is the very country now building the largest canal in the history of Central Asia, opening railways, reopening copper mines, and even raising a new metropolis for 3 million people, the size of Singapore. And all of it without help from the West. The Afghanistan we never knew is, right now, carving a path into the future through mountains, rivers, and political constraints. What is going on? Why is China joining Afghan megaprojects, and how does the Taliban intend to astonish the world with projects of this scale? Let's try to make sense of it. While the world goes on debating sanctions, legitimacy, and diplomacy, a new infrastructure player is emerging on the map of Asia. With no help from the West, no recognition, and no access to international credit, Afghanistan is launching projects that could reshape the logistics, energy, and even the political balance of an entire region. That doesn't mean everything will work out. Afghanistan remains one of the most unstable countries in the world, burdened with a host of internal problems and external risks. But for the first time in decades, it is not asking, it is building. And the question is no longer whether the Taliban will be recognized, but how far Afghanistan will go if it is simply left alone. In the north of the country, they are now building something few would have expected from Afghanistan, and it could redraw the entire map of the region. Kosh Tepa is the largest canal in Central Asia, and with it the Taliban aims to feed the north of the country. The plan is to stretch it nearly 300 kilometers from the border with Uzbekistan to the deserts of Faryab. Water from the Amu Darya, one of the region's main rivers, is meant to flow through it, and by the most modest estimates, it will draw off 20 to 30% of the river's water. If all goes according to plan, 550,000 hectares of desert will be irrigated. That's about half the territory of Lebanon. And for Afghanistan, it is a chance to feed itself for the first time in its history, without imports, without famine, without dependence. The whole thing will cost nearly $700 million. But here is where it gets interesting. Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan depend on the Amu Darya too. And now that Afghanistan is taking up to a third of the river's flow, one thing becomes clear. Afghanistan is no longer asking for its share. It is beginning to dictate new rules of the game to its neighbors. Not through war and conflict, but through infrastructure. Here, water becomes an instrument of influence, and perhaps the main currency of the future. The process is already in full swing. 6,000 workers are digging the canal right now in one of the hottest and driest zones of the country. By some estimates, this mega-project will be finished by 2028. There are risks, of course. The soil is unreinforced, seepage and subsidence are possible. But the mere fact of it, for the first time in decades, Afghanistan is building infrastructure that affects the whole region on its own. What is especially striking is how the system has changed. Just a few years ago, any project in Afghanistan was a byword for graft and endless kickbacks. Now, corruption has dropped dramatically. Projects aren't merely announced, they are actually built. The money doesn't vanish the way it used to. It turns into concrete, asphalt, and residential blocks. Around Old Kabul lie mountains, traffic jams, and a shortage of water. The city has sprawled to its limit, its infrastructure stuck in the 1980s. And now, out of nowhere, next to the current capital, the Taliban is starting to build a new Kabul. This is no housing district but a full-fledged city for 3 million people, spanning 722 square kilometers. That's 1.5 times the size of present-day Kabul. Old Kabul is overcrowded, chaotic, and has long since ceased to cope with its growing population. The new city is an attempt to start with a clean slate. The project is nearly 20 years old, but only now, after 2021, has its active phase begun. It's called Kabul New City, and the plan calls for 250,000 homes, universities, hospitals, schools, shopping centers, green spaces, and highways. Everything you see in the presentations of the new Arab cities. And the key point is that none of this is on paper alone. Thousands of homes are already going up. In 2024, some $700 million had already been invested. If the project is carried through, it will stand as a symbol of a new strategy for this country, not merely to survive, but to build a modern nation from scratch. And it will become one of the largest new cities in Asia. But for this new Kabul to be able to live at all, it needs light, water, and reliable sources of power. Here, the new Afghan authorities have a simple plan: build dams and take control of the rivers. First comes Kayaki, one of the country's oldest hydropower stations in the south in Helmand. It has been upgraded and can now put out up to 151 megawatts, enough to power an entire major city. Turkish contractors handled most of the work, with investments of around $200 million. Next is Baghdara, near Kabul. Its potential runs to 240 megawatts, and agreements with Chinese companies have already been signed. 3 more hydroelectric plants are under negotiation in Kunar, which together could yield more than 2 gigawatts. That's already power on the scale of a small country, but it's not that simple. There's the Kamal Khan Dam, closer to the border with Iran. Under a Soviet-era treaty dating to the 1970s, Afghanistan is obliged to release part of its water to the Iranians. But how to honor that during droughts is something no one quite understands, and disputes flare up every year. Once again, it's clear that water and energy in Afghanistan are about more than domestic development. They are about influence. When you control the headwaters of rivers and the power supply, you can dictate to your neighbors not only the terms of access to water, but in effect the pace of their agriculture, their access to electricity, and their political stability. Every new dam is a new pressure point. Power in the region today is measured not by armies, but by infrastructure. And by all appearances, the Taliban understands this game, better in fact than it might seem at first glance. But all of this is only the tip of the iceberg. Beneath Afghanistan's soil lie trillions of dollars, lithium for electric cars, copper for electronics, and rare earth metals for smartphones and defense. It's all here, in the mountains, in dusty mines, in deposits that for decades no one could reach. These are precisely the resources the whole world is now fighting over, China and the United States above all. The best-known example is Mes Aynak. There lies one of the largest copper veins in Asia. Near it, archaeologists once uncovered an ancient Buddhist city. 15 years ago, a Chinese company won the mining rights, but war, corruption, and instability got in the way. In 2024, the Chinese finally announced, "We're getting to work." Development got underway because the Taliban, unlike the previous government, promised them security and delivered it. And it's not an isolated example. In 2023, the Afghan authorities signed a 25-year contract to extract oil in the northern provinces, again with the Chinese. And the guiding approach now is this: whatever brings in money gets put to work. Since 2022, Afghanistan's budget revenues have shot up to $1.5 billion. The main line item is taxes on mining and construction. And the money goes not into offshore accounts, but into construction, roads, tunnels, and power grids. The result is a kind of closed loop. Resources bring money, money brings infrastructure, and infrastructure brings still more resources. It's a simple formula, but it's starting to work. For the first time, Afghanistan isn't asking for help. It has begun to earn from what it has always had. The Taliban knows full well that Afghanistan sits right at the center of everything. It is the key hub of trade routes between China, South and Central Asia, and the Arabian Sea, and Afghanistan intends to make the most of it. That is precisely why, in May 2025, China, Pakistan, and Afghanistan agreed to extend the CPEC corridor, a $60 billion Chinese megaproject, into Afghan territory. Now China gains a direct route from Xinjiang to Afghanistan's mineral wealth and the markets of Central Asia. Next come the railways. One of the flagship projects is the Trans-Afghan Railway, a line running from Uzbekistan through Kabul into Pakistan. Nearly 600 kilometers across mountains, deserts, and the most punishing terrain. If it is built, the delivery of cargo from Central Asia to the Arabian Sea will shrink from 35 days to 4. That changes the logistics of the entire region. And back in 2023, a branch toward Afghanistan already began operating, the Herat Railway. It's the first step toward connecting Afghanistan to the world's seaports. But that's not all. There's energy too. The TAPI gas pipeline is back in play. It is meant to run from Turkmenistan to India, passing through the whole of Afghanistan. People have talked about it since the 1990s, but in September 2024, the Taliban announced that construction of the Afghan segment had resumed. The potential is $1 billion a year from transit alone. So, thanks to its strategic location, Afghanistan is turning into a highway between Asia and the Middle East. At an altitude of 3,300 meters in the Hindu Kush lies the Salang Pass. The Salang tunnels are the artery that links the north and south of Afghanistan. Built back in the 1960s by Soviet engineers, it long ago became a vital corridor. But for decades, it remained one of the most dangerous tunnels in the world and was in appalling condition. Traffic jams, filth, carbon monoxide, and avalanches. Even so, up to 9,000 vehicles passed through it every day, though it was originally designed for 2,000 at most. In 1982, one of the most horrific road disasters ever occurred here. A chain collision, explosions, and hundreds dead. Ever since, the tunnel has been called the black hole of logistics. Now the tunnel has been fully reconstructed, $100 million, nearly a quarter of the country's entire tax revenue, and the work was finished in December 2023. Afghanistan has shown that it can complete even the most complex infrastructure projects on its own. The Salang Tunnel is open again, and it has become a symbol of the fact that for the first time in a long while, Afghanistan is paving its own road. In the most literal sense, Afghanistan, Afghanistan, Afghanistan.